Some analysts pointing to the retirement of Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy as something that could fire up conservative voters heading into midterms. We're now going to bring in our panel. Al Motter is a Brownstein Hyatt shareholder. He also worked on the Clinton campaign. Chris Wilson is a former Ted Cruz campaign pollster and a partner at WPA Opinion Research. Gentlemen, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And happy 4th to both of you.
Happy 4th too.
Okay, guys, so it's a beautiful 4th of July, but let's look down the road at midterms. Lots of people are expecting, or I should say were expecting, an enthusiasm gap. And oftentimes this happens after a major general election. But now there's a Supreme Court vacancy. So I'm going to pop up on the screen a quote from a writer for the National Review, Charlie Cook. And Charlie Cook, in this quote, talks about the enthusiasm gap. We're going to pull this up in just a second here. Get it up there. Here we go. What Kennedy retirement means for midterms. If you believe that Democrats are already energized, then the more that this will engage previously lethargic Republicans, the closer this election will be. But maybe not. So I want you both to respond to it. Chris, I'll let you go first.
But maybe not. It's a great way to sort of end up the quote. It could happen, maybe not. I do think you saw a lot of Democrat enthusiasm manifest itself in the special elections. There's no question about that. Their turnout was up across the board, although it did start to close as we got closer to the end. But what we've seen in primaries has been Republicans matching that level of enthusiasm, going back to the first primary contest in Texas, where Democrat had early vote enthusiasm, but Republican vote on election day was up, and really it was far in excess of where the Democrats were. And then you had the Democrat runoff in Texas, where it was an all-time low since the gubernatorial low going back to 1920. So I think what this does is it creates an enthusiasm behind the evangelical base that gave Donald Trump a victory in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, states that he was not predicted to win going into election day. And that's what this does, is it really creates, it closes that gap, and it really injects rocket fuel into that Republican evangelical base.
Okay, Al, I want your take, and keep in mind here in your answer for me that, you know, President Trump is not at the top of this ticket for midterms. So do you think that the vacancy will be enough to light that fuel for voter turnout amongst the GOP?
Well, I mean, there's nothing that activates Republicans like a Supreme Court vacancy and the court in general. Issues like life choice, depending on which side you come from, are motivating for Republican voters. Having said that, Democratic turnout is going to be exceedingly high for this midterm, and I do think that the vacancy also drives Democrats, although perhaps not to the same degree.
Okay. I want to switch gears quickly, guys. We mentioned it earlier in the show about certain people in the Democratic Party saying that Chuck Schumer and some others need to put decorum and a certain political politeness, I guess, aside. Some people would say that they've already started that process. At any rate, I want to start with you, Al. What is your response to that advice? Do you think that will play favorably for the Democrats going into midterms?
We're not as good a country when we are uncivil to each other, and calls for the Democrats to attack Republicans or to chastise them publicly, whether it's in a restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, or in a Mexican restaurant here in D.C., I'm against all of that. That is not in our interest as a party, and it's not in our interest for our political discourse as a country.
Chris, I'm going to ask you the question, give you a little different framework around it. Do you think that when there's a call for less than civility and a lack of decorum on the Democrat side, is that a bolster for the GOP? Does that give enthusiasm there?
You know, I hope that wouldn't play a role in enthusiasm. I completely agree with Al on this. And I'll tell you, if this was happening to administration officials in the Obama administration, I would have called it out, and I would have had anyone gone and called for Senator McConnell to stop the civility on the Republican side. I would stand here and say that is wrong and we should not do it. I agree with Al. On a day like today, the 4th of July, if we can't come together and recognize that we believe together and we stand for more together than we disagree on, then something's really wrong with the nature of this country. And I think we move forward now, and we should recognize that civility matters. It matters in politics. It matters in every aspect of life, and we shouldn't put that aside for any reason.
You know, if I might, Ebony, the subtext to all of this is that there's so much anger in this country. The president tapped into that. So did Bernie Sanders, for that matter, on the left. And so we have to get to the root of that to dispel some of this.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. Al, Chris, happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day, and may we all return to civility. Thank you.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Mike.